Okay, so we're going to look at how to make a slip knot, how to hold the hook and the yarn, and make a chain, which is the equivalent of casting on in knitting, and all your crochet starts with a chain. So first you need to make a slip knot. So take your yarn and take one end over the other like you're making a normal knot, and then with this end pop it down behind the back of your circle, holding the two ends. Take your hook and just pull up that to your hook, and there you go, you've got a slip knot that you can make tighter and looser. Okay, so that's your slip knot. Now, holding your hook, I tend to find that even if you're left-handed, holding your hook in the right hand works because you're using both your left and your right hand. Now, you can hold your hook any which way you want to. You can grab it, you can hold it like this, or like a pencil, whatever. I tend to hold it like this. Now, I've got a nice hook here, but all hooks are generally the same. They have a flat piece here. Even a sort of basic metal hook will have a flat bit here, and that is where you should be holding your hook, about here. And the flat piece also enables you to hold the hook with the hooky bit facing forwards. Now, you don't need to change that. You don't need to twist it this way and this way. You just need to hold it like that. Okay, so that's how you hold your hook. It doesn't really matter. Now, this is the important hand, your left hand, and this is where you're going to make the tension. Obviously with crochet, unlike with knitting, you don't have two needles, you have your hook and your hand. There are various ways of doing this, but this is the way I tend to find works, and once you've got this, you can adapt it to a way that suits you if you want. So with your palm facing you, take your hook, just hold this bit of yarn out of the way, and take the hook and the yarn over the front of your small finger all the way round to your palm facing side, over these three fingers. Then drop this yarn down here, and with your thumb and your first finger, I want you to hold that knot there. And if you're holding the knot there, right up by the hook, you're holding that loop open. Okay, hold that, and then lock these fingers down here, your little finger and your second smallest finger down like that, and that stops this yarn here trailing through all the time. It just keeps it tight. Okay, so I'll just repeat that again because this does take quite a lot of getting used to. Take your yarn and your hook over the front of your little finger all the way round back to this side again, then take it behind these three fingers and then just drop the end down, and with your thumb and your first finger hold that knot. Okay, then to stop this trailing yarn here running through your fingers all the time, just close those two fingers down, and that locks that yarn that's going through to the ball in place. And now you lift your second finger, and this bit of yarn here, this tense bit of yarn here, is your tension, if you like, and this is going to where you're going to make your stitches. So you've got your hold right, and you're holding your hook correctly. Right, so you take your hook under this tense bit of yarn from left to right underneath. That's called yarn over, whoopsie, and then you just pull that through the loop on the hook, and you've made your first chain. I tend to walk my thumb and first finger up the work, so I'm holding this loop open. Wrap it round again and pull it through the loop on the hook. Walk your fingers up, wrap it round and pull it through, and just keep doing that. The idea is that you should have a reasonably loose chain, a nice even but loose chain to start with, because with most crochet you will be working back into your chain. Okay, so this is the front of your chain, the series of V's, and you generally count your chain on this side because it's easier to see, and then the back of your chain is just a series of bumps, if you like. You can just see that. It's not quite as easy to see. Okay, when you're counting chain, you never count the chain on the hook, the loop on the hook. So this is your first chain, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, and now we're going to look at working some doubles. Now we're going to do double crochet. So we're going to work along this chain, and with crochet you work from right to left, and we're going to work into the front of the chain, and we're going to work into each one of these stitches. Okay, so you take your work. Now you need to ignore the first chain. That is called a turning chain, and we can talk about that later on. But a turning chain for a double crochet is one chain. So for this purpose here, it means that you miss the first chain and you work your first stitch into the second chain from the hook, which is here. So identify where you're working, and then you put your hook into the chain from front to back, just under the top arm of the V, if you like. Put your hook through there. Okay, then you wrap the yarn round the hook in the same way as we did when we were making the chain, and pull the loop through the chain. You've got 2 loops on your hook. Wrap the yarn round the hook again and bring it through both loops. You've got 1 loop left on your hook, and you finish your first double crochet. Now you need to work into every chain to the end of your chain. Now bear in mind that the stitch that you've just worked in often looks quite large, and as a consequence pulls the next stitch short, but you can see where you've worked. You can see these strands going in here. So my next stitch is this one here. So into the stitch, wrap the yarn round the hook and bring it back through the stitch. 2 loops on your hook, wrap the yarn round and bring it through both loops in one go. We'll do one more. Into the next stitch, wrap the yarn round the hook, bring it back through your stitch, 2 loops on your hook, wrap it round and pull it through both loops. And you want to work like that all the way to the end. Okay, so I've finished my first row of double crochet, and one thing just to note is that if you look at the top of your work, you've got a series of little V's running all the way along the top here. Oopsie, like this, and this looks like your base chain. These V's, these are the tops of the stitches that you've just made, and basically all stitches look like this on top. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we need to do the next row. Bearing in mind you need to work from right to left, what you need to do is turn your work. Pattern will always say turn, and literally all that means is turn your work. Okay, I tend to take my hook out and pop it back in again because it feels as though it's slightly twisted, but I'm sure it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. Now what you need to bear in mind now on this row and every other row is if you're just working rows of double crochet, you need to do 1 chain before you go into your stitch. This is called your turning chain, and this gets you up to the right height to start this row, and a turning chain for a double crochet is 1 chain. However, with double crochet that doesn't count as a stitch, so you need to look at your first stitch. Can you see the V's there? You need to put your hook into the first stitch from front to back, but this time rather than just going under the top arm of the V, you're going to go under both V's like that. Okay, so into your stitch, wrap the yarn round, pull it back through, 2 loops on your hook, wrap it round and pull it through both loops, and you need to work now into each double crochet under both V's all the way to the end. Now the only reason that you don't work under both V's on your first row or when you're working into the chain is simply because it's just too fiddly to get your hook between the V's and the bump at the back. So you tend just to work under that one arm. But now for this row and every other row, and for every other stitch that you do, if you're not working on the base chain, you work under both V's, which is the top of your stitch. And if you can see what I'm doing here, you can see you've got your little V's, the tops of the stitches there that you've just made for your next row. Get to the end of this row and you can see that your double crochet gives you a very, very dense piece of textured fabric. There we go.